Do you often wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom? You walk into the restroom, bend down to check the toilet bowl as a daily habit, hoping everything is clean, with no unusual insects or scary creatures. But imagine a more terrifying scenario. One night, instead of just seeing water, you rub your eyes multiple times and discover a man's face staring up from the bottom of the toilet. This wasn't a nightmare, but the horrifying experience of Yumi Tanaka, a young teacher. At around 6 p.m. on February 28, 1989, in Miyakoji Village, Tamura District, Japan, Yumi Tanaka, a 23-year-old elementary school teacher, had just finished her workday. Outside, the cold winter wind cut through the air, covering the mountain village in a thick blanket of snow. Yumi briskly walked back to her dormitory, not far from the school. She lived alone in a teacher's dormitory with the rare convenience of a private toilet in her room, something not everyone in the village had. At that time, construction in mountain villages like Miyakoji was still quite rudimentary. Yumi's bathroom had a squat toilet with a septic tank connected to a U-shaped drainage pipe system. One end was connected to the toilet, and the other led outdoors, where locals would occasionally open the lid to manually clean it. As usual, before using the toilet, Yumi carefully looked down into the bowl to check. But this time, her eyes froze, and her breath caught in her throat. Instead of the usual dim darkness of the tank, a man's face was staring up from the bottom of the bowl. Yumi panicked, screamed, and rushed out of her room. She hurriedly found the principal and her colleagues, recounting the horrifying event she had just witnessed. No one believed what she said until they all went to check together. When they looked into the toilet, everyone was stunned, confirming that it was indeed a human body, not some cruel prank. Immediately, one of Yumi's colleagues quickly called the police. Just 10 minutes after receiving the call, the police arrived at Yumi's dormitory and quickly sealed off the scene. They gathered around the septic tank to inspect and decided to pull the man's body out. However, the situation was far more complicated than expected. The septic tank's pipes were too narrow and winding, making it extremely difficult to extract the body. The victim's body was tightly wedged in the narrow bends of the system, causing all their initial efforts to fail. It wasn't until the following day, when excavators and cranes were brought to the scene, that the rescue team could begin the work of digging up the entire pipe system. However, this too yielded no satisfactory results. Finally, the police had to obtain a permit to use demolition tools to dismantle the entire pipe system. Only then were they successful in retrieving the victim's body. When the body was pulled out, the victim was found in a very strange position. His body was curled up, with his knees bent close to his torso and his face tilted to the left. Even more remarkable, despite the frigid winter weather, the victim wasn't wearing a shirt. Instead, he was clutching a neatly folded shirt to his chest while wearing only long khaki pants. As the police prepared to transport the victim's body to the forensic lab for further investigation, a local resident curiously approached to take a closer look. In just a moment, the man immediately recognized the victim and confirmed that it was Naoyuki Kanno, 26 years old, a young man who lived with his family, only about a 10-minute drive from the elementary school. At the time of the incident, Naoyuki was a supervisor at the nearby Fukushima power plant. According to the locals, he wasn't only notable for his handsome appearance, standing about 1.7 meters tall, but also loved by everyone in the village for his gentle and kind nature. Moreover, Naoyuki was very active in community activities, serving as the president of the Village Youth Association, frequently organizing recreational activities for the local youth. The discovery of Naoyuki in such a bizarre situation shocked the entire village, and no one could understand why someone like him had died in such a manner. Initially, the police hypothesized that Naoyuki had attempted to crawl into the septic tank from the outdoor drainage pipe. However, they quickly realized that this theory was hardly convincing. Given Naoyuki's height and large build, attempting to crawl through a pipe with a diameter of only 36 cm seemed impossible. As a result, the police's initial hypothesis became even more implausible. Faced with clear contradictions in the initial theory, the police had to set aside their assumptions and began taking statements from the victim's family to gather more clues. When Naoyuki's parents received the news of their son's death, they were completely devastated by the shock. They wept in anguish, and only after being comforted were they able to calm down enough to speak with the police. Naoyuki's parents revealed that their son had actually been missing for several days, and the family had been searching for him everywhere. Recalling the events, Naoyuki's father said that on the 23rd, about a week earlier, Naoyuki had attended a farewell party for a senior member of the youth association and returned home at around 1 a.m. The next morning, on the 24th, at around 10 a.m., while watching TV in the living room, he heard Naoyuki's voice from the hallway saying, "Dad, I'm going out for a bit." Then came the sound of the door closing, and Naoyuki left. He never returned. By the evening of the 25th, when Naoyuki still hadn't come home, his parents began to worry and started searching for him. The next morning, Naoyuki's parents called several of his friends to ask if anyone had seen him, but all responded that they had no idea. In addition to information from the victim's family, the investigative team also gathered an important detail from nearby residents. On the 27th, the day before Naoyuki's body was discovered, someone had seen his car parked in the co-workers' cooperative parking lot. Upon receiving this information, the police immediately went to check the scene. At the parking lot, everything inside the car appeared normal. Notably, the car keys were still in the ignition, as if Naoyuki had only intended to park briefly before leaving. However, these findings didn't lead to any significant clues, leaving investigators to await results from the forensics department. Regarding Naoyuki's body, the forensic doctor quickly made some initial conclusions. Based on the rigidity of the body, they estimated that Naoyuki had died around February 26th, 2 days before his body was discovered. This raised many perplexing questions for the police. If Naoyuki had been in the septic tank since the 26th, why hadn't Yumi, who lived in the dormitory, noticed anything unusual for 2 days? Why did she only report it on the 28th? At this point, suspicions began to focus on the teacher Yumi. When questioned by the police about her relationship with Naoyuki, Yumi said that she had known him before, but only as friends. Specifically, Yumi had once been harassed by a prank phone call from a stranger, and in a chance encounter, she had asked Naoyuki for help. Although she was very grateful for his assistance, they only met occasionally and had no special relationship. The incident completely surprised Yumi, and she couldn't understand why she was involved. What puzzled her most was that when she left her house, she had carefully locked the door. Upon returning, the door was still locked as usual, with no signs of forced entry. So how could Naoyuki have ended up dead in the septic tank of her house? Regarding the time she reported the incident, Yumi explained in a helpless manner that starting from the 24th, she had gone back to her hometown to visit her family, as she did regularly, and only returned to the school on the 27th to resume teaching. That night she decided to stay at the school with her colleagues, and it wasn't until the 28th, after finishing her work, that Yumi returned to the dormitory to rest. At the same time, the police received the forensic doctor's report after examining Naoyuki's body. The results showed that the victim had no significant injuries, except for a few minor scratches on his ear and knees. The cause of death was determined to be respiratory circulatory failure. In other words, Naoyuki had died from suffocation after getting trapped in the confined space of the septic tank. Based on the information collected, the Japanese police concluded that Naoyuki might have intentionally crawled into the septic tank to spy on Yumi. However, due to the narrow pipe, he became stuck and couldn't escape, leading to his suffocation and death. After determining that this was a tragic accident, the police decided to close the case. As soon as the conclusion of the case was announced, both Naoyuki's family and all the villagers were utterly shocked and could not believe it was the truth. In their eyes, Naoyuki was not a pervert or someone capable of such behavior. At that moment, a courageous police officer who disagreed with the official conclusion shared his perspective on the case. First, he openly criticized his colleagues in charge of the case, stating that they had not genuinely tried to fulfill their duties. From the moment they began digging up the septic tank, an action that could clearly damage the crime scene, they failed to take any photos to record evidence. Additionally, they did not properly secure the scene, leading to many people, including the police, firefighters, and villagers, gathering around and destroying important traces like footprints. Furthermore, one suspicious point was that the forensic doctors had washed the victim's body 3 times before conducting an examination. This inadvertently erased crucial evidence such as hair, fingerprints, and marks on the skin, significantly complicating the investigation process. As a result, just 1 month after the incident, the villagers collected opinions from over 4,300 people to petition the police department to continue investigating the case. With Miyakoji Village's population at that time being just under 10,000, this meant that at least half of the villagers doubted the police's conclusion. However, despite the strong public backlash, the police insisted that they had not found any new evidence to prove this was a premeditated murder. They outright rejected the villagers' request for a reinvestigation. So, what really happened to Naoyuki? Below are the 4 most plausible theories to explain the cause of his death. Let's analyze each theory to find the most accurate answer. First theory: Naoyuki was a peeping Tom. This theory stems from the police's argument that Naoyuki had intentionally crawled into the septic tank to spy on Yumi. However, there are many inconsistencies with this theory. First, there is no evidence to suggest that Naoyuki had deviant behavior in the past. Those around him described him as kind and well-respected. Second, the idea of crawling into a septic tank full of waste just to spy is hard to believe, unless Naoyuki had a strange fetish for filthy things, which the police neither proved nor confirmed. Secondly, if he were a voyeur, he would have needed to carefully monitor his target. But it's illogical that Naoyuki would crawl into the septic tank without knowing that Yumi had gone to visit her hometown. He couldn't have waited for someone without knowing when they would return. Third, regarding the crime scene, there were no favorable signs suggesting that a voyeur would choose the moment to enter the septic tank. Naoyuki surely knew the pipe was too narrow, and to perform such an act, he would have needed supporting tools like lubricants. However, Police records did not note that Naoyuki carried any such items. Regarding the timing, if Naoyuki intended to wait for Yumi, he might have had to stay in the septic tank for several hours. But before leaving the house, Naoyuki only told his father that he was going out for a short while, with no indication he planned to be gone for long. Moreover, his car was parked at the lot, unlocked, suggesting he was in a hurry, not preparing for a prolonged action, like waiting for his target. Finally, regarding physical evidence, one of Naoyuki's shoes was found at the scene, while the other was discovered near the river several hundred meters away. If Naoyuki were truly a voyeur, it makes no sense that he would abandon one shoe, run to the river, and then walk barefoot on snow to reach the scene. Second theory, Naoyuki encountered danger. The shoe by the river leads to another hypothesis. Could Naoyuki have been in danger that night, chased by someone or some other threat, and in his panic, crawled into Yumi's septic tank to hide, only to meet his death? This theory could explain why one of his shoes was found several hundred meters away from the scene. However, the likelihood of this theory is also low. Typically, in a chase, no one would choose a place like a septic tank to hide, as it is a dead end with a confined space, lacking an escape route and visibility. Psychologically, when facing danger, people tend to run toward places with a good view, where there are crowds or at least dark spots to hide, where they can call for help or find assistance. Even if Naoyuki had no other choice and was forced to hide in the pipe, a normal person would put their legs in first to check if they could easily escape. Therefore, it is very strange that Naoyuki went headfirst into the pipe. Third theory, Naoyuki committed suicide. Some have speculated that Naoyuki ended his own life by crawling into the septic tank, but this theory also has several inconsistencies. First, in most suicide cases, the victim usually leaves a note or some indication of their decision. However, in this case, there is no evidence to suggest Naoyuki intended to commit suicide, and no note was found. Second, common methods of suicide typically include hanging, jumping off a bridge, or falling from a height, with the goal of making the process quick. No one would choose to crawl into a septic tank to commit suicide, as this is a highly unusual and illogical method. Third, when examining Naoyuki's mental state, everything seemed completely normal. He still attended a farewell party with friends and greeted his parents before leaving the house. There were no signs that Naoyuki had suicidal intentions or was experiencing psychological issues. Fourth theory, Naoyuki was murdered. The more we analyze, the more it becomes apparent that the possibility of Naoyuki being the victim of a murder is the most reasonable. However, one important point to note is how the perpetrator could have forced someone like Naoyuki, with a shoulder width of about 40 centimeters, into a septic pipe with a diameter of only 36 centimeters. The police argued that this would be very difficult if Naoyuki wasn't cooperating. But in reality, if his arms were drawn in front of his chest, it's possible someone could have pushed him into a space a few centimeters narrower, meaning we cannot rule out the possibility that Naoyuki was forced into the tank. Additionally, according to the crime scene diagrams, the septic pipe was 1.07 meters tall, while Naoyuki was 1.7 meters tall. With his body proportions, his upper body from head to crotch was about 93 centimeters, indicating there was enough space for Naoyuki to be gradually pushed down into the tank. Therefore, the theory that he was forced into the septic tank remains plausible. However, another question arises. Why were there no signs of resistance from Naoyuki? The autopsy only revealed a few scratches on his arms and legs. This suggests that Naoyuki may have been unconscious before being pushed into the septic tank, preventing him from struggling. But if Naoyuki was unconscious when he was pushed down, why were his legs curled up? When his body was discovered, his legs were bent, which is inconsistent with someone being shoved down while unconscious, as the legs would normally straighten out. The most logical explanation for this is that Naoyuki may have regained consciousness after being stuffed into the septic tank. In a panic upon realizing he was trapped in a tight, dark, and foul-smelling space, he may have tried to curl his legs to push himself forward, thinking it was an escape route. However, ahead of him was the toilet bowl with a diameter of only 20 centimeters, not large enough to escape. In his desperate attempt to escape, Naoyuki may have exerted too much effort and begun to experience hypothermia, a common phenomenon in cold weather when people react by removing clothing to relieve a sensation of overheating. The bottom of the septic tank, with a diameter of 47 centimeters, had enough space for Naoyuki to remove his shirt and place it on himself in his panic. The root cause of Naoyuki's death may be related to political tensions in the village. Just 10 days before Naoyuki's death, a fierce election had taken place to elect a new village chief. Due to his excellent rhetoric, Naoyuki was asked to lobby for one of the candidates. At that time, there were two opposing factions in the village regarding the nuclear power plant, those in favor and those against it. The pro-nuclear side believed the plant would bring jobs and stimulate the local economy, while the anti-nuclear side worried about the environmental and safety risks the plant could pose. The two sides had argued intensely, forcing them to seek the support of influential people in the village, including Naoyuki. Despite the countless questions and implausible theories surrounding Naoyuki's death, as the years passed, no police unit took responsibility to reopen the investigation. The silence of the police was not just a sign of indifference, but also exposed serious flaws in Japan's legal system at that time. From failing to properly secure the crime scene, overlooking crucial evidence, to hastily drawing conclusions, all of this reflects negligence and a lack of professionalism. These mistakes not only obscured the truth, but also gave the impression that justice had been compromised by power or money, burying the truth in darkness. Naoyuki, a beloved and respected young man, did not deserve to endure the disgrace of a perverted crime that he never committed. It seems that the voices of Naoyuki's family and community were stifled, drowned out by the cold machinery of the investigative system. The small, fragile cries for help from forgotten people were neither heard nor empowered to fight for the truth. This case has become a symbol of injustice, where those in power can easily close the door on what they do not wish to uncover. And Naoyuki, a victim not only of death but also of irresponsibility, will forever be a painful reminder that sometimes justice does not stand with those who need it most.